Good morning. So, another week of information coming our way that breaks our heart. I was hoping a week could go by and I could come up here and speak and be like, and be all happy. But then Las Vegas happened, and those moments that occur in our history of time are continually waking us up, aren't they? Stirring us. And the talk today is about undefended love. And I was really, because of this message, I was really taken by Las Vegas and what happened there. The tragedy itself, but more so the undefended love that was demonstrated, right? That's what we're left with. That's what we take away. I took the time on the MSN page when they released all the names of everyone, and I carefully read each and every one, just kind of scrolled down, and some of them had stories, some of them were just their names. But then you read the stories of how heroic others were in that moment of guarding, holding, saving lives. And I thought that is humanity at its best. That is undefended love. That is where we open our hearts back up once they've been touched in such a fragile way. So with that little bit of a lead in, I'm just going to remind you of this short video is pure, undefended love. And I'll have Damien, where are you? There you are, sorry. There was nobody there a moment ago, and there you are, always. So watch this, and watch it with, this is a spiritual practice. Open your heart.
Good boy. Yeah, good fish. Yeah. Good fish.
Thank you, Damien. Now, doesn't that feel wonderful? That is the undefended heart. That's it. You can go now. That is what the author of a book that they're referencing in this week's talk around the nation for the Centers for Spiritual Living is this book called Undefended Love. And they speak of intimacy, the intimacy. And remember the into me, you see, into me, you see. And really allow this wisdom to cross that barrier of your heart where you have put up some forms of defense, because Thomas More speaks that intimacy can only occur when the heart is undefended. To cut through our personal differences means learning how to love and be loved without defenses and without obstructions. It means cultivating the capacity to be emotionally present even when we feel exposed or vulnerable, learning to relinquish the many strategies we have employed to feel safe and in control. It involves your courage and risk. And there's a story from William Martin in his book, The Tao of Forgiveness, that feeds into this very beautifully. There is no one to blame, and it's a chapter on anger. A young African doctor sat in a hospital ward by the bed of a teenaged woman who was suffering from AIDS. He was curious because the woman seemed, in the past few days, to transform from an angry, depressed, and withdrawn patient into a smiling, laughing, and talkative young person. He asked her, "What has happened to you? You seem like a different person than the one who first came in this hospital." And she told him this story. "When I first came here, I was visited each day by a volunteer. She was a nice person, but she was very angry. She talked about the uncaring drug companies who would not supply the medicine I needed. She complained about the way the government misused money. She hated the man who gave this disease to me, even though he was my husband, whom I loved. After a few days, I began to feel that my life was one big, huge mistake. I felt that all I should have experienced had been taken from me. The same anger that was in her stirred in me. I began to hate my late husband. Everything in my life was wrong now. The disease in my body, the choices I made, the actions of everyone around me, and there was no way to make it right. For a month, I lived with ever-increasing anger and despair. One morning a few weeks ago, a new volunteer began to visit me. There was no anger. There was no anger in her at all. She didn't talk much, but she seemed so interested in me that I began to pour out my anger to her. As I did, all she ever said was, 'I'm so sorry, dear.' She said this in the most kindest voice you can imagine. She never blamed anyone for what was happening. She listened to me and talked with me about my life, about my home and the animals that I loved. She laughed at my stories of my little brother and his pet rabbit. She marveled at the beauty of the countryside as we walked outside together. She did not blame me, my husband, or anyone else. She loved me just as I am, sick. She left a few days ago, but now I'm happy. I know that my life has not been a mistake, and I'm not a mistake. I would like to live longer. I probably won't. But that is always the case for everyone, isn't it? Everyone wants to live longer, but everyone has to die, and there's no one to blame. I'm happy. I'm happy. That idea, and of course, William Martin is a Taoist, and so he offers everything, every opportunity for us to, in spiritual practice, to offer any form of suffering and place yourself into the mind of the Tao and allow yourself to dwell there and find resolution. And the story of her shows us the courage that it takes and the independent way in which we find our own truth. We're always surrounded, aren't we, by good news and bad news. And we have choices all along there on which we're going to dwell upon. What are we going to take in? What are we going to allow to feed our soul? And I find there was another study by, he was a nonviolent communication expert. Let me see if I can find his name in my notes here. Kelly, I think his name is, Kelly Bryson. And he wrote a book, said, "Don't be nice, be real. Be nice, be real." Nonviolent communication is a wonderful process, and we'll be, Robin, who is one of our new practitioners, and Jim Nelson, Robin Backstrom and Jim Nelson are teaming up together, and you'll be offered a course on nonviolent communication, and I really recommend it because if you've never done it before, this gives you some tools and insight into your own nature and your own way of trying to figure out when you're in conflict, what are your needs. And in this book, Don't Be Nice, Be Real, Kelly shares with us the insight that in the days of Jesus walked in a way that sometimes we forget that he was really a rebel. he stood up for what he wanted. And he taught us not to be passive or violent, but find a way to equalize the power status and the playing field. This is the wisdom that Kelly was writing about in one of his chapters. He said what he saw in some of his study of Jesus was that Jesus used embarrassment techniques. And I thought, really, I love when other people explain the Bible to me. And so he said he used social faux pas, things like turn the other cheek, because normally socially that you got slapped with a certain hand, and the other hand was for cleaning, potty stuff, whatever, how to say this. So one hand was restricted for the potty, and the other one was what you fed yourself with. So it was an insult. Nobody would use that other hand to do anything. So, but when he says that, turn the other cheek, that would make the person have to use the wrong hand, and they wouldn't do it because it was a social, it just showed disgust. So they would walk away. It would diffuse the moment. So he taught his disciples to love their enemies compassionately, but also to passionately stand up against them. And so he shared a story about himself, and I found this really kind of cute. He was playing a basketball game, and a man got really angry at him for something that he did, and he began to stick his face into my face, Kelly says, so you can see those two men nose to nose. He goes, at first my ego responded, and I got scared and angry, and I stuck my nose right up against his like men do when they're about to fight. And then a flash of creative intuition told me to just kiss him. So I did, and he was so disgusted. He began to spit and wipe and freak out. And he said, but we didn't fight. It prevented a fight. And so he goes on to say, this is his quote, being real is about a fierce, loving, compassionate connection to ourselves as we confront those who would express violence of work, action, or energy toward us. So we hone those skills through our practice, through our teaching, through this philosophy, and many more, through the nonviolent communication skill practices, to find ways that we can still express ourselves and have our needs met and have the other person's needs met. Find what the Dalai Lama talks about it as being a field of equanimity, to find that field in controversy and move from there. It's about maintaining the eye of the hurricane focus on the wholeness that contains both the other and the I from this grounded connection. There you have no fear of what others might say or do. All your attention is absorbed in the intention to respond with strength and compassion for both parties. Wow. Think about that when we feel that we're on that edge and we feel so right and we feel so righteous in what we're saying. But is the way we're going to present ourselves going to heal the situation or cause more conflict? So the invitation of undefended love is to find an understanding with each other, find reference points where you can still stand strong, still speak your heart and your words, but also, just as the volunteer did for the person with the AIDS, you listen with your whole heart into the other person's world to identify your common ground. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to establish that, to help dissolve defenses first. We all have, it's our human nature. It is built in the chemistries of our body. It's the adrenaline response to fright and flight and run. It just automatically happens. And so, but we have the divine higher consciousness to tap into, to reach into, to pray into, and to allow ourselves then to soften that chemical response in the body and to say, what would love do here? What would love do here? Rumi says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Isn't that beautiful? Rumi. Find in your heart Don't have to seek love, because what is love? Everywhere present, omniscient, omnipresent. It's so much, just as you watched how familiar you were with each animal being embraced by a human being in those moments. Your heart just opens instantly to that. Your heart opens instantly to the fresh face of a new baby, to the change of weather, to the full moon. Our hearts are forever expanding in the awe of the gifts of the mother, the gifts of nature. And so all we need to do is recognize when we're distracted, what barrier is my heart holding? John O'Donohue, one of my favorite poets, he says, all the possibilities of your human destiny are asleep in your soul. All the possibilities of your human destiny are asleep in your soul. You are here to realize and honor these possibilities. When love comes into your life, unrecognized dimensions of your destiny awaken and blossom and grow. Possibility is the secret heart of time. There's so many beautiful quotes from different spiritual teachers that continue to, they have had the experience of awakening, so they poke our hearts to look more deeply into those moments. And Stephen Levine says, simply touching a difficult memory with some slight willingness to heal begins to soften the holding and all the tension around it. So yes, working with undefended love is certainly takes you into practices of forgiveness. We need to expose ourselves to what we expect will be emotionally painful. We need to go there, and it's not easy. It means it's inviting us to stay with an issue, even in the presence. Maybe it's just your partner, but stay with it. And it could be the hardest thing you're doing, but stretch and stay there until you can feel any part of you that might be shutting down. Listen to that. Listen to that. Oh my gosh, I'm shutting down. I feel like I want to walk away. I feel like I want to just go have a drink and not have to deal with this. I want to go eat something. No. Take a pause and feel what the divine is trying to show you physically through your body. Go into that and try to allow yourself to spend some time to open it up. Because otherwise we're just going to get paralyzed in those instances with fear, and it's asking us never to lash out, but to stay fully present. This is the presence process that many of you are doing with Reverend Pam. And if you haven't done that work, presence process really invites you to whatever comes up, stay with it. Breathe with it. See it so clearly. Relive it if you need to. But see it for what it was, and you will most often recognize the true gift that it was there teaching you, awakening in you. It has your attention for a reason, not to cause you suffering, but to wake you up. So it means staying even when you're feeling bad or inadequate, even if you're feeling less than or distracted. It's asking you to stay there, because you will feel better. In the author of the Undefended Love, he says, in an undefended relationship, instead of bandaging the symptoms, we make a conscious choice to perform the operation that will get to and remove the cause of the pain. We are committed to helping each other dissolve, not resolve, our issues. I like that, don't you? We can dissolve things. Might not ever be resolved completely. That's the hiccup with forgiveness. People think if we go to forgive anything that we have to condone it. No, we're just trying to dissolve the stagnant flow of energy inside of you. So dissolve, not resolve our issues. We encourage each other to dive into the truth of our raw inner experience and encounter the core emotional belief that we are unwanted, less than, or flawed, and certain that shoring up the personality's defenses is not going to serve either of us in the long term. So where do those parts of our personality come from? Where do we shore up? It's when we've been hurt. And sometimes when we've been hurt, this is the teaching, this is why we have this philosophy that's so beautiful of Ernest Holmes and Troward and Sri Aurobindo and Rumi and every teacher, the teachings of Jesus that continue to show us the way to drop the defense and to open up our hearts. Spend time when you're flicking through Facebook. Find these kinds of YouTube videos that open you back up and not dwell on the reinforcement of some of the ugliness that seems to be out there in our world, constantly pulling our attention. It's tempting us. And some of the things we recognize, there are distractions. There's things that we can't fix our individual self out there, but we can do all the work to personally fix and fine-tune that soul energy within each and every one of us. So to realize this opportunity to dissolve your defenses, this opportunity is the invitation to really know yourself. That's what this teaching is about. Really know yourself. You're whole and loving beings, right? You can't be anything else than that. You are that love that we speak of. And when you express this and know this in yourself, when there's no defense at the core of your being, we're asking every one of ourselves in every situation, when you go to visit with one another in the social hall, we ask you, drop your defenses. Be real with one another. Be so emotionally real. And when we do that, our communication speaks from the heart to one another. We're not speaking from what we think other people are going to want to hear us say and be liked, because we're loving ourselves enough to be that loving presence. We're no longer going to stay in that place of feeling stuck or wounded or defensive or afraid or withholding in any way. Notice all those words, you can kind of feel the body contract inside of yourself. And this is some of the times that we have these contracted moments is because we're listening too much to that self-talk. And when we're so invested in the self-talk of negativity within ourselves, we project that onto the people around us, and then they become that, just like the sick girl was saying. It becomes your experience out there. And that's what I'm talking about in that shadow side. We've been doing this deep exploration of the chakras, the Eastern philosophy of the energy systems of the body, and each one, there are 7 main ones in our body, and each one has its way inside of us. And oftentimes, that which we don't really want to look at goes into our shadow. And the question always is, well, what's my shadow? And everybody goes, they can't see their shadow. It's right there, it's really obvious. And we can't. And people can lovingly try to tell us, but it takes that deep inward meditative state to really meet your shadow. You know what happens in that deep meditative state? The light, the internal light, that divine light permeates your whole being. There can't be a shadow then. You merge with that. The shadow merges with that. And you become one with that inner light. And you open your eyes and you're healed from that. You're awake, you're aware, you're authentic. Because you spent the time in silence. You spent the time dialoguing in prayer with the divine. See, the prayer of your heart always is your conversation with God. And in the silence that follows, when you take a pause in your prayer, God's speaking back to you. Always in that silence. That's the spiritual path. Walking, communicating with the divine, and then taking time to enjoy the gifts of the divine all around you, the messages all around you. So yes, we deal with our self-judgments and our doubt and our blame and our confusion and our anger, anything that we can label bad or negative about ourselves or others. Yeah, we have to deal with that. But how do we deal with it? Through prayer, through meditation, through dialoguing authentically with our beloved friends, because we can't avoid these attributes of ourself or others. Because if we avoid, we only turn them into addictive behaviors. We only end up gossiping. There was a cartoon that I handed out to the patients this week, and it was two ladies at a table complaining about another table of ladies, and the lady says, "I hate what they're gossiping about because I don't know any of the people they're talking about." I just thought, oh my God, that is so true. I thought, we never invest ourselves in anything that doesn't really have any personal, meaning to us, but gossip. And it's this lying and cheating, all of these different ways. So when we turn and go face to face with what Carolyn Mace refers to in Entering the Castle, those reptiles in the dungeon, or again, back to the shadow, only then can we dissolve them or transform them. These are the things that block our true heart, right? They shield us from our true nature, to love unconditionally, to love undefended. Feel that in your own self. Use those words this week and watch the moments where the defense begins to shield your heart. That's my invitation, my longing for all of us to walk as undefended in total love with what's going on in those moments, and to allow ourselves to open as quickly as it did when you watched that video. Those are the gifts of transformation. That is the gift of this teaching. And remember, you don't have to like what's coming up. I'm not asking you to agree with things and like everything. And you might not be able to really ever feel comfortable with some of the emotional pain and those feelings that are uncomfortable. But I know when I've sat with people and they've shared their demons that possess their heart, I watch what's purging from them, and I don't stop their tears. I watch those tears fall down their face. I don't offer them a hanky right away, because I know what's happening for them is their internal work, their deep purging. Those tears are holy tears to me, and I don't wipe them until they fall, they fall, they fall. And when I see that there's not going to be much more, then you offer the hanky, then you offer your heart. There's the compassion, there's the empathy, because they've done their work. They've stayed with it long enough. So let the tears pour out. Don't try to stop or condone their story in any way. Just sit with generous heart, generous listening, and discover who's showing up in that moment, in that dialogue. So these are moments that I'm asking you to really be courageous, to sit with disappointments of your soul. Go ahead and sit with it. Sit with unworthiness, sit with loneliness, sit with resentment. Let it rise. Let the tears flow. It's a holy moment. It's a purging. It's a sadness, it's a regret, it's the shame, it's all of it. It's all of the piercings of our soul. But beyond that is the love. That's where the seed of God dwells within you, that divine knowing, that whichever you want to name, rises inside of you, and that's in that breath that you take so deeply into your soul, that's always present, and you remember in that moment who you are. So I just want to join in a brief, as we close, questions for your Tao mind to kind of think about as we go into our prayer for today. What situations in your life have caused you to feel defended? Do you think being defended is necessary to bring about your change? Who would you be? Who would you be without that feeling of defense or anger? And why has it been so hard for you to let go? Why has it been so hard for you to let go? In this Tao meditation, just close your eyes and feel these words from Martin. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Take 3 deep breaths. How can I help? Take 3 breaths. What do you need? Take 3 more breaths. It's wrong. I hate it. Take 1 deep breath. How can I help? What do you need? Take a deep breath. I am listening. I am here. I am listening. I am here. You are held. In this moment, there is a recognition. Can you feel it in the silence all around you? We call it that field of love. Not the human love of need from one another, but that vast field of divine givingness. It's holding us. What do you need? I am here. I am listening. It is the divine holding us. Offer it up. Let it go. In this moment, you are divinely connected. I want you to physically feel and recognize as you connect with that field, that unifying field. God is, I am. God is, we are. We're in that field together. And in this place, we offer up our defenses. And we offer up our confusion, our doubt. We offer it up. We let it go. We release. We purge. How can I help? I am listening. And we go deeper. We keep diving deeper and deeper into that heart, into that prayer, into that union, into that divinity. It's why we're here. And then we feel a stirring, a tear can almost start, and our heart feels the longing for that deep connection to stay, to live, to be, to revitalize. It's right there. I'm listening. How can I help? And then we give thanks. As we recognize this moment of absolute humility, we lay ourselves down. And we are held, and we are comforted, and we are empowered. And when we rise, there is a strength and a heart of compassion that is ready to serve the world, because we know who we are, and we know who our source is, and nothing can go wrong. So we give thanks for this communion, for this opportunity to witness the divine, to witness undefended love, to witness one another. Thank you, God. I release this word knowing that we are so ready to embrace any part of humanity, any part of this world that comes our way. Just like the video showed, we are ready. We are ready to serve. Thank you, God, and so it is. Thank you.